morning, everybody. Sorry for the late start. I'd like to thank everybody for coming for what's going to be a great series of remarks and discussions surrounding small business. My name's Andrew Holt. I'm the publisher at City and State. Again, thank you for coming. What we're going to do is, first I'd like to thank Can Capital. Without their support, this event wouldn't be possible. And so frequently we put on these events and we put out the print magazine twice a month and the other various products that we put out, which I would encourage you to sign up for, whether it's the print or the email at cityandstateny.com. Without the support of partners like Can Capital, again, this event wouldn't be possible. And we thought it was great when we started working with them just based on the topic, because it is such an important topic, small businesses driving the city economy. I myself had a small business. It was a deli out in Bushwick. Some of the things that they address, funding and capital, were certainly some of the things that I could have used during my time in the 2 years that I had that business out there. So I would encourage you to take a look at some of the materials they have in the back. They're going to weave some of that into the discussions today. In the effort of time, I'm going to introduce the CEO, Dan DeMaio, who is then going to introduce the SBS Commissioner, Maria Torres Springer, and then we're going to move right into the discussion. So if we can have a round of applause for Dan DeMaio.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for having us here today. We're extremely pleased to be part of the sponsorship and supporting this event, especially given the theme around small business and small business growth and supporting small businesses. I was in the back and I had some notes here and probably too many pages, and somebody said to me, "Oh, is that your speech?" So I was afraid to say yes, but no, I only have like one page, which includes a nice introduction to some of our panel members here today. What's interesting is that Can Capital has been in business for some 16 years providing capital, working capital to small and medium-sized businesses. Just in New York, I was looking at some numbers yesterday, we've provided funding to more than 10,000 merchants and provided working capital to the tune of $300 million. So I was really pleased that businesses in general, we've done more than $4 billion of funding to small businesses. And small businesses are primarily using this capital to expand their businesses. Expansion of small businesses, providing them the capital, absolutely has a direct stimulating effect on the economy in terms of creating jobs and driving all kinds of residual effects as it relates to the economy. So I would be remiss if I didn't say good morning and thank all of you for coming to what should be an insightful event. And before I introduce Maria Torres Springer from New York City Small Business Services, I'll give you a little bit of background on Can Capital. We're the most experienced alternative finance provider in the country. And what that means is, as I said before, we've provided more than $4 billion of working capital to more than 150,000 merchants across the company. We've amassed extensive amounts of information and data and built proprietary techniques in order for us to make decisions around creditworthiness and capacity for the small businesses to be able to handle the working capital, and for that to be done in a responsible way so that they can expand their businesses. And we've continued to develop every day and apply significant investment that's generated from that business mix in homegrown technology and techniques that power our ability to provide working capital to small businesses. We've been focused on this data before it was the buzzword around big data. We've collected and amassed hundreds of millions of data elements that help us to predict what's the best opportunity for us to provide this working capital to merchants. But merchants are challenged, and what we're announcing today is that we've created a small business health index. And we've done that in partnership with SurveyMonkey. It's powered by SurveyMonkey, and I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with it, but just a fantastic way to get feedback, real-time feedback from your customers, and in this case, small business merchants. And I'm going to just take a couple of seconds because we extracted in our recent survey some facts or some responses that I think are relevant to our discussion today, and the issues that are affecting small businesses nationwide. First, we saw a very high percentage of small business owners surveyed that they were expecting to grow in the next 12 months. 61% of merchants surveyed said that they were expecting to grow in the next 12 months. Very encouraging. However, another data point that in particular stood out to me was, and I think a good kickoff point for some additional discussion today, is 65% of small business owners surveyed said that gaining access to working capital is quite or extremely challenging. It's hard for these small businesses, and those of you that have affiliations with small businesses or run small businesses, I'm sure that you'll appreciate that. Well, so we'll discuss some potential reasons for this, some insights. We'll get some discussion going about how to stimulate businesses and to enhance their businesses. A little bit more about Can Capital. We have two products through wholly owned subsidiaries. One is a straight business loan, which is a direct business loan to merchants, and the second one is known as, in the category, as a merchant cash advance, which is essentially the purchase of a fixed amount of a small business's future receivable. Small businesses, in many cases, aren't able to provide collateral. They have future revenue streams in the form of receivables, so we can conduct a transaction where we go in and provide funding at a discount and purchase an amount of future receivables to cover that. It's quite advantageous for some merchants because it has a tendency to ebb and flow with their sales. Or conversely, if some merchants, small business merchants, are more familiar or comfortable with a straight loan, then we also offer that product too. The advantages is the ability for small businesses to receive very quick access to funds versus traditional lenders. That's what alternative finance providers are all about. We're filling in market gaps where perhaps there's a lower rate of penetration or the traditional banks aren't able to hone their skills in this particular category. For example, a restaurateur in the Florida Keys with a broken air conditioner in August needs fast funding. A boutique that needs to refine its concept in response to a big box retailer opening nearby, or a business with a chance, a very quick chance to acquire inventory from a liquidator. All these are good examples of where speed to funding and access to funding is very important. And these businesses, they can't wait. Without any further delay, I'd like to introduce New York City Small Business Services Commissioner Maria Torres-Springer, who will talk about the services SBS provides and some challenges small business owners in the city are facing compared to nationally. Commissioner Torres-Springer's record for expanding small business opportunities and history of building relationships with community, government, and private businesses to support economic development projects throughout the city has been exemplary. From directing the revitalization of the 27-acre district surrounding Coney Island and creating amusement and entertainment district to helping to lead the Applied Sciences New York City initiative, spurring new applied science and engineering campuses across the entire city. Torres-Springer has continually proven that her commitment to creating a dynamic city economy works for all New Yorkers. And please join me in welcoming Commissioner Maria Torres Springer.
Thank you, Dan, for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm very thrilled to join you here today. First, I want to thank Andrew and the team at City and State for providing such great coverage of politics and government in New York City and in Albany, fulfilling the critical role of keeping us all informed and accountable. Now, I have to say, every morning, my first read are really the notes that my 4-year-old daughter leaves for me around the house. But after I read through all of those, my second read is City and State's first read. So thank you for that. I also want to thank City and State and Can Capital for hosting this Small Business Forum today. Now, it's often said that small businesses are the lifeblood of our city's economy, but we know that they face so many challenges, from businesses being priced out of certain neighborhoods to difficulty accessing financing or cutting through government's red tape. I really can't think of a better time to come together to discuss the unique needs of New York City small businesses and, importantly, how we can all help. Our main goal at SBS, under the leadership of Mayor de Blasio, is to ensure that every entrepreneur and every job seeker, no matter where they are from, what they look like, what language they speak, has the resources they need in order to succeed and thrive in the city. And so I'm thrilled this morning to have the opportunity to kick off today's discussion. The more than 210,000 small businesses in our city, each employing up to about 100 people, represent nearly 95% of all businesses in New York City. And these small businesses employ more than half of the private sector workforce. Many of them are small. 84% of all of New York City businesses have less than 10 employees. These businesses are crucial not only to our city and our neighborhoods' economies, but they also serve as an equalizer. As the daughter of immigrants who started a number of small businesses, I can tell you that for many people, owning a business can be your first chance for economic self-determination and a real path to the middle class. Now, the mayor has tasked all of his agencies with fighting inequality in all its forms, on all its fronts, and building a city where everyone can rise together. I believe that a critical part of the administration's commitment to fighting inequality is ensuring economic security and creating good jobs for all New Yorkers. Our economic development agenda focuses on preserving a strong quality of life, improving infrastructure and resiliency, and fostering a competitive business climate. But we have to make sure that we are achieving these goals while also balancing the equation in favor of the hardworking families and businesses of this city. And at SBS, we are trying to do just that. Through our network, for instance, of 7 business solution centers across the city and 8 industrial business providers, SBS delivers free business services like business courses, financing assistance, recruitment services, pro bono legal advising, and help navigating government. Our business acceleration team helps cut red tape so that businesses can open faster. We also offer targeted services to promote the growth and success of minority and women-owned enterprises, and are constantly working to ensure that the city's contracting reflects the great diversity of business owners in this city. Last year, our business services helped more than 15,000 businesses and launched hundreds of businesses. And to help businesses expand and hire, SBS offers recruitment services that match New Yorkers to jobs, a service that saves small businesses time and money. At our network of 16 Workforce One centers, last year alone we connected 30,000 New Yorkers to jobs and helped more than 3,000 access training. We also support community-based economic development organizations across the 5 boroughs to create thriving commercial corridors. We manage the largest network of business improvement districts in the country, 69 bids in total, 45 of which are outside of Manhattan. And we offer capacity building services and competitive grants to inspire innovation among our more than 100 partnering community organizations. But we know that we can and that we have to do much more. So as Commissioner of SBS, my goal is to help all New Yorkers achieve greater economic security for themselves and for their families. We are going to do this by connecting New Yorkers to good jobs, helping them build skills, and enabling the businesses which employ them to grow in a way that strengthens our neighborhoods. And all this while making sure that the agency is as innovative, ambitious, and responsive as possible to the needs of the public we serve. Now, this points to three main priorities. First, we know that small businesses often have difficulty finding good talent, and we currently offer and are expanding our job seeker training to better align with the needs of businesses. Our emphasis is on preparing New Yorkers for jobs in sectors that offer family-supporting wages and real career paths. So we recently launched the Tech Talent Pipeline. It's a collaboration between business, community groups, training providers, and government partners that will work to recruit, train, and connect unemployed and underemployed adults to good-paying jobs in the technology sector and help fill the talent gap that the current burgeoning tech sector is experiencing. We've also recently launched the Jobs for New Yorkers Task Force, which is made up of 30 industry leaders to rethink the city's workforce development system to ensure that we tap into talent right here in the 5 boroughs, not only to meet employer needs, but connect New Yorkers to good jobs. Second, we're going to deepen our connections with neighborhoods. We're developing a more inventive and comprehensive neighborhood-level economic development approach where city services are knit into every neighborhood, where we align economic development and workforce development, and there's a more supportive relationship between community-based organizations and government. Third, and importantly for this morning's discussion, we will continue to work harder and more effectively for businesses. For instance, to reduce the burden of fines and violations on small businesses, we are collaborating with the Department of Consumer Affairs and Commissioner Julie Menin, who's been a real force on this issue. I'm sure we'll be talking about the administration's, the steps administration has taken to address this issue. But we're working with DCA and other regulatory agencies to simplify the city's regulatory environment so that businesses can start, operate, and grow. We also help businesses cut through red tape through our Business Acceleration Service, which guides businesses through the city's regulatory process and on average helps businesses open 80 days faster. And just 2 weeks ago, we started this in the restaurant sector. We announced expansion of this service into the retail and industrial sectors, which will allow us to serve another 60,000 businesses in New York City. And as will be discussed later today, a significant issue that small business owners face is accessing capital. Our network of business solution centers offers free one-on-one financing assistance. It connects business owners to traditional banks and to alternative lenders. And last year alone, we connected business owners to more than $45 million in capital, and we continue to expand the efforts. Now, we're helping small businesses across the city face the challenges that are in front of them. But what's important to me and to this administration is that we make sure that our city's diverse communities have access to all of these services. So, for instance, we are making a very concerted effort not just to better reach immigrant-owned businesses who contribute so much to the vibrancy and fabric of our city, but to essentially fundamentally change the way that government provides services to immigrant-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. So today, I'm happy to announce steps that we have already taken in this administration to achieve this. First, we have expanded our business education offerings to include additional courses in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Russian, Haitian Creole, Bengali, and Arabic. Second, we are launching our New York City Craft Entrepreneurship Program in Spanish so that unemployed and underemployed New Yorkers with craft skills can earn supplemental income by selling their crafts online. Third, in addition to expanding our business acceleration service to the industrial and retail sectors, we are also aggressively increasing our outreach to communities outside of Manhattan, in particular immigrant communities. With the support of city community development, we also recently launched the Immigrant Business Initiative so that we can better serve immigrant small businesses through the city by working with community-based organizations who know the immigrant-owned businesses well, who they trust, who they have familiarity and relationships with, so that we can provide free business courses, one-on-one counseling, and a community-based marketing campaign in at least 5 languages. We'll begin reviewing the proposals from community partners this week, and we'll be able to start offering these services in the fall. And finally, as anyone who is following us today on Twitter can see, we've also launched SBS feeds in Spanish and in Chinese to help spread the word through our new social networks. What I'd like for everyone to take away is that these are not just about pilot programs that help special populations. This is about fundamentally changing the way government works with small businesses. It's about making sure that government's vast infrastructure works better and more effectively for the businesses and job seekers that most need our help. So what I've outlined today, I hope, is just the beginning of our work to support businesses, neighborhoods, and job seekers to advance the mayor's goal of fighting inequality across the city. I'd like to thank City and State and Can Capital again for inviting me to open today's discussion. I hope you enjoy the panel conversation, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you to make our great city even greater. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Nick Powell. I'm the City Hall Bureau Chief with City and State. We have a great panel for you this morning. I'm going to just do some quick introductions, and we'll get right into the discussion. So, to my right, we have Steve Cohen, the Executive Vice President and Deputy Commissioner of Empire State Development. He heads the Department of Small Business Services and Community Economic Development for ESD. Then we have Andrew Riggi. He is the Executive Director for the New York City Hospitality Alliance, a trade association formed to foster the growth and vitality of the industry that has made New York City the hospitality capital of the world. Then we have Julie Menin, who Commissioner Torres Springer had mentioned earlier. She is the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs. And yes, she was appointed by Mayor de Blasio this past May. And finally, we have Councilman Robert Cornegy, who is also the chair of the Committee on Small Businesses, and he represents areas in central Brooklyn, including Bedford-Stuyvesant. And with that, I'm going to kick it off to my co-moderator, Dan DeMeo, and he's going to get us into the discussion.
Nick and I are going to test. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Nick and I are going to do a little bit of a tag team on the moderating, but a bit cliche, but always a great warm-up question is, give us a minute or so on the concerns you have, the cliche being what keeps you up at night as it relates to your involvement and your support as it relates to your mission, your responsibilities. What keeps you up at night as it relates to small business owners and driving small businesses' health through the economy? Please, can we just go in order? Yeah, anybody?
Test. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I guess that's a loaded question, but what keeps me up at night is making sure that small businesses have access to the wealth of information and services that are available through city services. And what I found in my short tenure was that there are great services, including access to capital on many different levels that just businesses don't know because they don't have the capacity to attend all of the seminars and workshops and plenary sessions that are offered throughout the city. So what keeps me up at night is that not being sure that every business owner in the city of New York understands what's available to them and has access to it.
Well, one of the biggest challenges I think small business owners face, and I should state from the outset, I used to be a small business owner. I used to own Vine Restaurant and Market, which was located not that far from here. And so I really understand firsthand the challenge of both opening a business and owning a business. One of those challenges that we're very focused on at the Department of Consumer Affairs is making sure that small businesses know the rules and regulations. And this is really a top priority of the administration. So just last week, we announced 24 reforms aimed at reducing fines, approximately $5 million in the upcoming fiscal year. To the point of understanding rules and regulations, we put over 41 inspector checklists online for the first time. That's significant because prior to that time, we would hear from small businesses, well, we don't know what the DCA inspectors are looking for. And prior to this time, basically the inspectors would refer small businesses back to our website to read the law. We quite frankly think that that is absurd. We should basically have all that information transparent and accessible, and now for the first time ever it is. And also to that point, we are also for the first time issuing rules and law change alerts so that small businesses will be notified of any changes to rules and regulations. And I could mention many other things that we're doing, but I'll also say, particularly for immigrant communities, we are now conducting all inspections in language of choice. So our DC inspector walks into a small business, they have a laminated card with many languages, the business owner can point to the language, and the inspector has a phone and calls in, and the inspection is done on the spot in the language of choice. So these are a multitude of ways that the administration is very focused on making sure that small business owners understand all of the myriad rules and regulations.
Well, at the New York City Hospitality Alliance, we represent restaurant and nightlife establishments, so the issues that keep them up at night usually get them calling me in the middle of the night. And there's a lot of them. I think number one, there's been a lot of publicity lately about, leases and rents. So just general operating costs. Labor costs are huge. A lot of people tend to be concerned about all of the general operating costs. But then I'd say number two, sometimes even number one for a lot of operators, is just the general regulatory environment. It's really nice to hear the commissioner and others discuss ways that we can make the law more clear, kind of reduce the unnecessary burdens, and allow business owners to feel like the city actually cares about them. So just letting people know what they're doing, what they have to do to comply, and if they are not in compliance for some reason, giving them the opportunity to fix with a warning or a cure period. It's really the regulations that have a lot of people really nervous, because the vast, vast majority of small business owners are good, hardworking people, and they just want a fair shot, and they feel, especially with the restaurant industry, they provide a lot to the local economy, but then also to the social landscape of New York City. I mean, everyone loves going out, restaurants, eating, drinking, so they're important to the social landscape and the economy, and they just want to feel like they are being, supported by local government.
Well, at Empire State Development, we're the economic development agency of the state, and so we provide services to small businesses. And after an economic downturn, small businesses often create the vast majority of net new jobs, so supporting small businesses is especially critical during this time. And so we think about what are the barriers to small business development and growth, and what are ways that we can address those barriers. And so some of them are access to information and resources, some of them are technical assistance and training and those sorts of things, and connecting them to resources that will help them grow their business. And some of them relates to capital, which is the primary topic of this panel. So there are a number of initiatives, and we can get into those a little later, that sort of fall into that. I think just a couple big headlines are, the governor is extremely committed to small business development and growth and job creation and those sorts of things, whether it's through Startup New York or other big new initiatives. But just in general, $160 million in new access to capital programs for small businesses have been launched over the last several years, leveraging $750 million in private money. We just recently launched Business Mentor NY, which is connecting business professionals to startup new entrepreneurs to provide real-world business guidance to help them answer questions that only practitioners can know. We have a Bridge to Success program where we're helping minority and women business enterprises get the working capital and bonding that they need in order to execute on state contracts and things like that. So we're looking at barriers to development and growth, and growing their sales and growing their workforce, and trying to find solutions to do that.
Now, Dan mentioned in his opening remarks the Can Capital Small Business Health Index, so I wanted to just pull out a couple of numbers from that I found interesting. 18% of small business owners cited the ability to offer competitive benefits as one of their biggest challenges in competing with big businesses, and 29% cited healthcare costs as the biggest threat to small businesses. On top of that, 33% said the Affordable Care Act was the regulation that has or would have the biggest impact on their business. So I'm curious, with those numbers in mind, what our panel makes of this kind of dichotomy. Is there a disconnect between the supposed advantages of participating in Obamacare and the cost for small businesses to provide health care coverage for their employees?
I'm happy to start first. I mean, to me, this is a perfect segue to talk about paid sick leave because starting on July 30th, employees in New York City will be able to start to take their paid sick leave. This is a top priority of the mayor, and thanks to the mayor and the speaker's leadership, paid sick leave will now affect over 1 million New Yorkers. So I want to talk about that because the idea that small business owners are concerned, whether it be about health care costs, we believe very strongly with paid sick leave that it's important for small businesses because the last thing you want is for a sick employee to come to work. I can say this firsthand as a former small business owner. When a sick employee comes to work, it means that other employees will get sick, which leads to higher health care costs and also leads to, quite frankly, lower employee morale and higher employee turnover. In the cities that have implemented paid sick leave, whether it be San Francisco or Seattle, it has not in any way resulted in negative business consequences that recent studies have shown. And I would also note, and this is, I think, an important statistic for people to know, is that over 160 countries around the world have some form of paid sick leave. We are extremely committed in this administration to working very closely with the small business community. And in fact, we are about to roll out an application that small businesses can use to be able to attract employees accrued paid sick leave. So I mention this because to me, it's sort of the congruence of the various factors that you're mentioning that small businesses are concerned about.
I think that that's an excellent opportunity to talk about the fact that a lot of the small businesses that I have the opportunity to come across are concerned with the potential for unintended consequences, and how one paid sick in and of itself is a great opportunity to support workers, but also coupled with the Affordable Care Act, really has can potentially put a constraint on businesses for growth and development. And I think that we want to be careful to make sure that there's not an unintended consequence for these great programs that give access to individuals in the workplace what they deserve, that it doesn't have an unintended consequence or negative impact on the growth and development of small businesses. So I'm kind of hearing that from small businesses, one in particular who's a restaurateur in my district who has several restaurants in the district and employs about 150 people, and who is now complaining that between the two, he's facing having to close one of his sites in order to meet the demand for what the Affordable Care Act will actually cost his business. So having heard that, I just want to make sure that there is not an unintended consequences that actually shrinks small business growth and development as opposed to growing it. Because those programs in and of themselves are great, and I supported them in the council. We just want to make sure that there's not an unintended consequence.
I would agree there. I mean, it's not, each business operates a little bit differently. As far as from a competitive standpoint, I think what we're seeing is that many of these types of benefits, they're often offered by businesses to, attract different employees. They may not exist or be as great of a tool to get a good employee to come on board. One of the reasons is because many of them are being mandated by government. So they may be a little bit less of a tool. And I don't think it's just paid sick leave or the Affordable Care Act, but as the councilman said, it is a combination in the cost. And we can have a long discussion about what's the financial impact on businesses by all of these different laws and regulations. But I think for the sake of this conversation, it is really, really important that agencies like Consumer Affairs and the council and just government in general do reach out to businesses and assist them. And the mentality has to be first, we're going to reach out, we're going to assist them with the compliance versus just using this as another tool for fines and to generate revenue. And I think when you speak with small business owners, obviously the cost and the compliance and the administration, those are all major concerns. But then they want to know that if they are trying to do the right thing, but perhaps they slipped up in one minor way or two minor ways or three minor ways, that are not really, really serious, but they may be in violation of the law, they are not going to be penalized so much. And that's a big concern.
Can I just add, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just wanted to say on the topic that as it relates to paid sick, the concern with small businesses that I've spoken to was not paid sick in and of itself. They want to make an investment in their employees so that there's a good work environment. They want to do the right thing. They're concerned to some degree, the micro businesses especially, with the accounting portion and record-keeping portion of paid sick. So I'm glad to hear that now there's a template that they'll be able to use. And we had some preliminary discussions, so I thank your office for that. But that was the main concern, was not paid sick, the whole idea and concept of paid sick. It was how were they going to do the accounting for that, and would there be penalties if the accounting wasn't done properly?
So let me jump in there because I think this is an excellent point, and I want to be very, very clear about this. The administration is extremely focused in terms of paid sick leave on first education and outreach to the small business community. We will be looking at mediation as the first resort. So to Andrew's point, we are not looking to step in with onerous fines on this. We first want to make sure that both from the employer and the employee perspective, people know their rights, and then we will mediate. However, if there is retaliation against an employee or serious situations like that, of course we're going to be stepping in and taking the necessary legal action that we need to take. But to the larger point of fines in general, we are so proud of the fact that we were able to meet the mayor's vision of reducing fines in general on small businesses by, as I mentioned earlier, this approximately $5 million reduction for the upcoming fiscal year. And we're doing that by actually reducing the number of counts. We're doing that by giving small businesses the opportunity, particularly for many signage violations, to cure it before getting any type of fine. So that in the last administration, if one word of a sign was incorrect or there was information missing on one piece of printed material, frequently small businesses were looking at multitude of fines, at thousands and thousands of dollars of fines. We have completely changed that. And so, as I mentioned, we announced these 24 reforms last week, and we believe this is such an important step to making sure that city revenue is not being generated on the backs of small businesses, as the mayor has made very, very clear.
And I believe you said last night on Inside City Hall that it's going to save, or the revenue from fines is going to decrease by $5 million? Is that
Correct. We are, again, this is an approximation, but we are projecting approximately $1 million decrease in fines for the Department of Consumer Affairs in the upcoming fiscal year. This would be $5 million that would be going back into the pockets of small businesses. So small businesses could hire more employees, do more money on marketing. We think this is really great for small businesses, and it's great for the city of New York.
Steve, did you want to?
Yeah, I think that the point that was brought up is that this is just one part of cost to small business and those sorts of things. And so it's about sort of addressing that in general. And I think that the administration is really focused on that. And whether you're talking about, the business advocate at the Workers' Compensation Board, where they'll actually work with you, and if the business is playing ball, they can expect some movement there, and that can actually make a difference in terms of workers' compensation fines and things like that. There are business services at Department of Labor. They can help you do employee manuals, taking into account all these other requirements that are part of the business climate. And then we're looking at, whether it's a business who had their rent increase or whatever the cost may be, there are things that need to be done, perhaps, in terms of retooling the business model, or maybe they need some capital to be able to renovate a new place, or those sorts of things. And so we sort of look at that holistically and work with that business and layer on the various programs and resources that we have. We have networks of small business development centers and entrepreneurial assistance centers. Those entrepreneurial assistance centers help with 60-hour entrepreneurship courses and exist out typically in underserved communities and neighborhoods and those sorts of things. We've got the Business Mentor NY piece. We've got all these financing programs. And so they can actually come to us, talk to us about their problem either through the SBDCs, or they can actually contact the small business division at Empire State Development. We'll help sort of navigate all that, all those resources. If they have a workers' comp, we can connect them to Neil Gilbert over at the Workers' Compensation Board and so forth. So part of our job is to help address a problem or a situation holistically, navigate to the other agencies, layer on the services that we provide in terms of access to capital, training, technical assistance, and those sorts of things.
I just wanted to reiterate the fact that what I found in my short tenure is that there is a great wealth, or there are a great wealth of services available to small businesses through a number of agencies. So what we found, though, was that businesses did not have the capacity. So I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that for the first time in many years, there are new initiatives put before and funded through the council, one of which is called Chamber on the Go, which is going to put all of us in an RV. We're going to travel around the city to small business corridors. I say that jokingly, but actually, literally, that's what's going to happen, and take this right to the main commercial thoroughfares of these small businesses who haven't been able to access that. It was funded. In the next couple of days, we'll be sitting down working out exactly what it looks like, where we'll be, and in all 5 boroughs, we'll be taking not just the Chamber's information, which is there's a wealth of information, but all of the information that's being offered here today directly to the business owners' doorsteps. So I'm really excited about that program, not just because it was one of the new initiatives that the administration saw was necessary, but because I really think it's going to provide an answer to some of the questions that are going to be asked this morning.
That's fantastic, because with the education, the communication, the training, I mean, and you said it, that small businesses are time-starved. There's a lot of services, there's a lot of support. If we can help you in any way,
Just ride with it.
I'll go with you, and we'll paint the RV with maybe a little bit of Can Capital branding, however you want to do it.
Definitely talk.
Sounds like a reality show.
The direct question is for those businesses or business owners that perhaps their credit profile doesn't quite fit that of traditional forms of financing through traditional banks. Are there enough alternatives out there for providing capital to stimulate these small businesses? Julie talked about the Solutions Center. You spoke about all the state support, hundreds of millions, tens of millions. If anybody could just zero in a little bit on the availability of working capital and alternative solutions to small businesses, then that would be great.
I think at least for the restaurant industry, it sounds like a silly question, but just quickly, a show of hands, who likes to eat at restaurants? Okay, who would like to get a reservation at one of their favorite restaurants on a Thursday evening at 8 p.m.? So you could all potentially be investors in restaurants. And that's the main point. I think so many people in the restaurant industry, because traditional commercial loans have not been available to the restaurant industry, they have gone to friends and family. And the good thing, and it's a little bit different about restaurants and other types of retail store, people like to have, that can afford to own a piece of a restaurant. Even if they're not, an operating partner, they want to be able to get that Thursday 8 p.m. reservation. So it does have a sense, at least in New York City, where you're able to go to friends and family. And I'd say that is a very popular, if not one of the most popular ways to raise capital. I mean, there are other ways. You discuss some of the merchant loans. There are banks and programs through SBS and some of the other agencies. I think, again, going back to knowledge and information, there's also creative ways. Depending on the amount of money you need, it may not be a large loan. It may just need an injection of cash. So there are a lot of these websites, Living Social, Groupon, where someone can put some sort of deal on and get a quick injection of cash. if you need to do more capital improvements, there are programs. But again, it goes back to a credit history. It goes back to, have you owned other businesses? Have you owned multiple restaurants? So it does become more and more challenging, but I think that's why there really needs to be a focus out there from both those agencies, companies that are providing loans to the business owner, to let them know what the loan really means. Because, you know, if you're a multi-unit restaurant group or a larger corporation, you may have a little bit more knowledge, experience with these types of loans. But if you're a small business owner, you're trying to make payroll, you're trying to keep your doors open. So if you take a very short-term, high-interest loan, you know, for some people, if you know what you're getting yourself into, it can be terrific. But if you don't, it can really, really be devastating. So again, it goes back to the education and letting people know that, you know, if you can afford to support and invest in local business, it's a great way. Some of the margins in your return may not be huge, but I think it is you know, a great opportunity to help spur local economic development.
One of the things that the Department of Consumer Affairs runs is we house the Office of Financial Empowerment, and which is called OFE. And through OFE, we run 30 financial empowerment centers across New York City. We have helped approximately 25,000 individuals with financial counseling. And the financial counseling we provide is very intensive one-on-one counseling, where we help people consolidate their debt. We help them improve their credit scores. We actually put people on a budget if they don't have a budget. And we also have 8 banking partners and offer a number of different banking products, particularly targeted to the 825,000 New Yorkers who simply don't have a bank account, or the hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers who might have a bank account but are what are called underbanked. So I mention this because I think it's very important for people to know about this service, so that if they are facing any kind of financial difficulties and perhaps want to open up a small business, or they own a small business but are facing financial difficulties, they really should consider contacting our Office of Financial Empowerment.
I think that, you know, this idea of alternative lending and, you know, what the appropriate role is and how big should it be and is there enough of that, is a huge area of focus for us. And I think as long as you have businesses that are putting money on high interest credit cards, they're you know, going to Prestamistas or loan sharks in Washington Heights. They're dealing with other sort of more predatory forms of capital, that there's still more for us to do. However, there is a rather large network of community development financial institutions in the state of New York. We support those institutions and other community-based lenders in a variety of ways. And, you know, hundreds of millions of capital in new capital has been put in the hands of small businesses over the last several years. So, and not just, you know, high growth businesses. We certainly have invested and are investing in innovative high growth companies. Those that are, you know, in many cases outside of the digital media corridor in New York City, which is doing rather well, but there are other pockets of the state and other industries here in New York City where there's an opportunity to provide that early seed stage equity capital. We're doing that. But we're also working with alternative lenders and community-based lending organizations, non-bank lenders, to provide alternative sources of capital. We've done almost $70 million through our Small Business Revolving Loan Fund, which helps a large number of restaurants and hospitality businesses and retail businesses and startup businesses. 2/3 plus happen to be minority and women-owned businesses, and so forth. So we'll work with Grameen America to do the very, very small loans, micro loans, you know, $1,000, $1,500, those sort of step loans. And they do thousands of those every year, all the way up to, you know, loans of $250,000 and so forth, through some of the larger community development financial institutions. So, you know, compared to other states, we have a larger network of alternative capital. And we need to take advantage of that, and we are, by funding them in a variety of ways, whether it's providing loan loss reserves to stimulate bank and alternative lending to small businesses, or whether it's providing loan capital at extremely discounted rates to community development financial institutions and others. We have a grant program to support those lenders. which is rare among states. And so we provide them with institutional capacity, building grant funds, technical assistance dollars so that they can work with those businesses. Many of these businesses need hand-holding, and they have to put their financials together and those sorts of things. Very, very important to blend not just the capital, but the technical assistance and the education and those sorts of things, absolutely. And so that's a big area of focus for us as well.
I just want to add, I would be remiss if I didn't say that there were a lot of federal and state dollars that were earmarked to help small businesses through the Sandy recovery. And to date, a lot of that money hasn't hit the ground yet. So I want to use that model to make sure that we go fast enough that we actually are able to help businesses, because there is money available, but again, it's not falling on the doorstep of the businesses that need it the most. So those businesses that are struggling are having difficulty with their financials and don't meet this high requirement to some degree that's offered for the easy lending. So they wind up going to hard money institutions, if that, to find lending sources. So I just really want to make sure that we're not guilty of what happened through the Sandy crisis, where millions of dollars were earmarked and never really landed where it was supposed to. And some of those businesses, unfortunately, actually literally went out of business and don't exist today. And if they could have just gotten access to that capital, which was earmarked for it, it would have happened. I don't want that to happen in the city when we have not only this great panel, but I come across every day people who are willing to, and institutions that are willing to do the lending. Just want to make sure that whatever barriers there are from those willing to do the lending to those that need the lending is removed.
So there's been a lot of discussion throughout the city and state about raising the minimum wage, potentially as high as $13 an hour in the city, should the state pass a bill that is currently on the table. But the index that Can Capital conducted shows that small business owners feel that a minimum wage increase would have a major impact on their business. And I'm wondering, is there sufficient data or information out there to kind of support or allay these concerns about a minimum wage increase? I mean, it says, for the businesses that operate, more on the margins, would this really affect their bottom line? So,
it's a interesting question. I think everyone, any business owner living in New York City understands that it's an expensive place to live. For the most part, they always want to take care of their team. The better taken care of their team is, the better that their business will likely do. But there is only so much that businesses can afford. We just saw, interesting enough, our organization, we did not oppose the recent increase in the minimum wage. In fact, even on the lower end of the scale, dishwashers and others working in the restaurant industry were making at least $9 an hour, if not more, at other establishments. Our concern was more with the tipped employees, who make a little bit less because they make often multiple times the minimum wage when you calculate in their tips. So it kind of gets into a little bit of a complicated issue. But going back to this specifically with a $13 minimum wage, our feeling, and I know some others in the business community have felt that there are certain types of authority vested in different levels of government. And this is more of a discussion to be had at a state level versus a municipal level. We suggested that with paid sick leave and some other areas, but I think we need to all work together, both industry and government, to find creative ways. If we're going to be passing new regulations, we can't always have them 100% employer funded. Let's look at some unique ways to create types of insurance pools where an employer and employees pay in a little percentage, and then it can be withdrawn to cover some sort of social benefit. And we're all here talking about small business, difficulty having access to capital, getting loans, etc. So I would say, yes, it's definitely hard. There's definitely a lot of businesses at a $13 level that would really, really have a lot of difficulty. In the restaurant industry now, for servers at least, if you're talking they get paid a base of $5 an hour, if you were to bring that up to 13, what's that, 130% labor increase? I mean, that is enormous. I mean, think about just your personal at-home costs. If, your groceries went up 130%. So we're talking about big money. It's an important issue. These dollars, yes, they could They're going to help everyone, help the community, but it's an important and difficult conversation, but I think absolutely there are many struggling businesses that at that rate would be challenged.
Thank you so much. Well, let me say that the administration, the mayor is extremely focused on making sure that people are paid a fair wage. We have to remember the poverty statistics in New York City. Approximately 20% of New Yorkers are living at or under the poverty level, which is really a shocking statistic. And we want to make sure that this administration is doing everything possible to be able to support people. So with regard to minimum wage, the thing that I think people need to keep in mind is those additional wages will be spent locally in communities, helping to lift those communities as well as small businesses where additional spending is being spent. So those are some of the important factors. And I would also say that the mayor has made very clear, as I said earlier on in the panel, that he wants to really help the small business community as much as possible. And that is why we proactively release these 24 reforms to reduce fines approximately $5 million. Those $5 million are going to go back into the pockets of small businesses, enabling them to hire additional employees.
So here's where I've gotten in trouble before. Let me see if I can address this without getting in trouble this time. So what we agreed that, and by we I mean me, agreed that there should be some increases in minimum wage to meet the needs, but we asked for it to be done responsibly over a period of time, giving businesses an opportunity to adjust their price points and to do all kinds of things that would, because let's be clear, if that happens, then my burger goes up from $12 to $15. So it gets passed on to the consumer. So if we did it incrementally, it would give a business an opportunity to change their price points, to do things that were conducive to business growth and development. So so that's got to be thought through incredibly. So and even $13 an hour, somebody told you that would allow them to survive in the city, that would be not true, right? Because even that's still not enough money. So that in and of it, just the increase in and of itself, without some housing subsidies, without some other, without the administration continuing to work diligently to make sure there's affordable housing and all those kinds of things, in and of itself, it doesn't make as much sense. And for small business, it doesn't make sense unless we, in my opinion, unless we do it incrementally. So an overnight change from what the minimum wage is now to that would have a negative impact, I believe. And I think it was mentioned here, nicer. So hopefully I won't get in trouble for that. I just believe that we should be responsible and do it incrementally so that everyone has an opportunity to adjust to that increase.
The only thing I'll say is that there are a lot of studies out there on this, and a lot of good points were made. It's not mutually exclusive to be able to pay workers a fair wage and to do it in a way that doesn't overly burden business. But at the end of the day, that's up to the legislators and the governor and the city to decide what the appropriate level is, and then we'll work with that to try and help those businesses in whatever we can.
So we're a little bit pressed for time, but we're going to open it up to the audience for a few questions. And there's a microphone right in the aisle that you can.
Can you hear me? I don't know if this is working. Can you hear me?
We can paraphrase.
I'll wing it the way I did when I tried to get a loan from the Small Business Administration. And they were kind enough to, I couldn't figure out why I would go to them as opposed to try to go to a bank. Because in the end, what they said was, oh, your business is not showing enough profit yet, you're bad risk. I said, listen, this is what I do, this is what I have, this is my market, this is what I'm doing. They said, how much time are you putting in? I said, oh, I'm working like crazy. I'm putting in lots of hours. Oh, if you're working that hard, we're even less likely to give you a loan because, you're proving that you can't make your business work, which was absurd. And they recommended that I spend all my savings, which I've done. And my feeling is, it feels a little bit like a hoax, I mean, what the whole idea of a Small Business Administration that basically tells you we can't help you. So what's the difference between that and going to a bank directly? So I don't know what you've done that's different that would help a small business. to just exist long enough to build itself. And so that's my question. What do you have that's different, that would give me a different experience than what I've had so far? Thank you.
I'm happy to address that. Not so much the SBA issue, because that, again, I think you should take up directly with SBA, and I hope that there are representatives here from SBA who can speak to you about that. But let me talk specifically about rules, regulations, and fines, because there is where I believe there is a sea change between this administration and the last administration with the attitudes towards fines. We believe it's very important, and I'll speak from the perspective of the Department of Consumer Affairs. We regulate over 55 industries, 78,000 businesses. And we think it's very important that when fines are assessed, they are done in an equitable and fair fashion. So again, as I said earlier, when people make an innocent mistake, when they
Fines have nothing to do with my question. I'm talking about getting funding to run a business. What does fines have to do with? I
Well,
understand
fines-
it's peripheral.
when-
It's very peripheral, but it's not directly.
Well, you said that you own a business, and
Yeah.
so if your business is being in any way regulated, whether it's a Department of Health business
No,
or...
it's got to have funding to exist long enough to make it get off the ground. That's what we're talking about. Now we're talking about fines.
Well, Commissioner Torres Springer mentioned earlier in her comments, SBS runs 7 different centers where basically there is representatives there who meet about funding. She indicated that approximately $45 million has been distributed in terms of funding for small businesses. We also at the Department of Consumer Affairs have representatives in our licensing center each and every day, financial counselors who can meet with you and any small business owner who is having problems getting access to capital. So again, I would recommend either coming to our licensing center or coming to one of the 7 SBS centers that are operated by the City of New York.
So I can address his question a little bit. So SBA, that's the federal U.S. Small Business Administration. Their main program is to provide guarantees to banks to adjust their credit profile to lend to small businesses. They are but one source, however. So there are some alternative lenders, many of which are called community development financial institutions. Those are institutions that are certified by U.S. Treasury and the CDFI fund there. They tend to be nonprofit lenders, many of which are community-based. They range from those that focus on real estate and expansion and those sorts of things to those that do entertain startup businesses. Now, startup business may have more difficulty getting $250,000, but for smaller amounts of money, there are some options for startup businesses or businesses if yours have been around for a while, but you're still operating marginally. They still might be an option for you. So what I would say is, I don't want to take up too much time here, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards and give you some very specific options of some of these alternative lenders and CDFIs, and we can work directly with you.
And just lastly, on behalf of Canton Capital, perhaps we can fulfill your needs if it's been steady cash flow, if you have dependability around your business, if you've been in business for a certain amount of time, we can look at your profile and perhaps get you some funding and help you out as an alternative finance provider. So I'll try and see you after this session.
Hi, good morning. One of the areas that no one has talked about is the creative arts. The creative arts industry has suffered so tremendously, particularly after the downturn of the economy, where most of us are practically bankrupt. We can't access any of these programs that you're talking about. It is a waste of our time. I have lost more money winning certain grants, programs, than if I had done it on my own. Now I am practically bankrupt because of this. We are forced to be non-for-profits where we're not supposed to make a profit, but we need money to operate. So we don't get operating money or administrative money. We're told to find it elsewhere, and we can't find it. The other thing that we need help with is we need some art districts in this city, because we have basically nomadic business styles. We don't necessarily need a permanent space, but we do need time for series and workshops and when we're doing seasons. So therefore, we're having problems getting rental spaces. We're getting problems having spaces for exhibitions. Landlords are ripping us off left, right, and center. We have no one to protect us. These fees and permits that we have to pay fluctuate, so there's no consistency with it, so we can never plan a budget. So we would like to know if the city is really seriously going to help the creative arts industry, not just technology, not just entertainment, but those of us who do create, or rather develop creative products that the public does want and take for granted and want for free and not pay for.
So the short answer from the city's perspective is absolutely yes. You have one of the strongest advocates I've seen on cultural affairs in Lori Cumbo, who is a council member who at every turn brings up the fact that the creative arts has been omitted. And I'd like to speak to you afterwards. But the short answer to your question is yes, from a city's perspective, it does recognize the void. We held a hearing on access to capital as it related to nonprofits. My legislative person is here, Jeff Campagna, and he can attest to that. So we'd certainly like to speak to you afterwards.
Thank you.
I would just say, not being a government official and working with restaurants, we've heard that quite a bit, whether it comes to issues like live music or hosting, exhibitions for local artists. And I mean, I would make a suggestion, happy to chat with you as well. I do know, restaurants are struggling. They're always looking for ways to get people in the door. Perhaps there are some synergies in certain areas of the creative arts where the two industries could potentially work together. Obviously wouldn't solve an issue, but potentially a nice way to sell some arts and get people into a restaurant. So I think kind of different organizations that represent different industries may have unique synergies. You just really need to go kind of work together and come up with creative ideas to hopefully make some of them work and ideally work well.
I just want to also add that what we found in our initial hearing was that I believe 12 or 13% of the city's workforce comes through nonprofit employment, being employed through nonprofits. So we realize that that's a significant number and they need to have the supports in place, including access to technical assistance and access to capital. So in my first hearing as the small business chair, that was actually our first hearing, access to capital, which yielded that information that 13% of our workforce is employed through nonprofits. So we are committed to making sure.
Hi, my name's Taryn Duffy. I handle government and public affairs. First of all, I want to say thank you. This is a great forum today. I agree with the council member that there's so much information out there for small businesses. So many people just don't know about it or just don't have the time to really invest and find all the programs. But there hasn't been any mention today about assistance for small businesses in promoting their businesses and business development. I know it's primarily about capital funding, but in my experience, there's such a void there. So whether you're a general contractor, or you own a salon, or you're an interior designer, whatever your business may be, or a restaurant, they might know how they know their skill, they know their business, but they don't know how to promote it. They don't know the importance of engaging their local media outlets, building relationships with their electeds, working with their business associations. The difference between print and digital advertising and really social media. They just don't know how to do that. And I'm curious if any of your organizations are really going to provide some guidance there for them, because I think obviously if they get the business they want, they won't need as much capital infusion from you.
So that's a great point. So and it relates to both understanding technology and building a website and a web presence and being out there on social media and thinking through all the different marketing and promotional tools and options for your business. And a lot of that is sort of contained in other business professionals, either folks that are web development professionals or other people that are marketing experts and those sorts of things. And so one of the big new initiatives, and this is one that was mentioned in the governor's state book this year, is Business Mentor NY, which one big part of Business Mentor NY, and a lot of the team is actually here today. And so if you come up to me afterwards, I'll introduce you to the folks. You can raise your hands. There we go. And so we have a partnership with Wix, we have a partnership with other technology providers and folks that are marketing experts and experts in promotion and those sorts of things. And what this program does, and it's just businessmentor.ny.gov, it connects you to business professionals, it's all free, to provide that kind of guidance and support. So, and in many cases through a more intensive mentoring or longer term type engagement than just answering a question for 10 minutes and hanging up the phone. So happy to connect you to that resource.
I actually am that resource, and that's
Oh.
what I do for small businesses.
Oh.
I'm just saying that's how I know there's a need out there, and I encourage all of you, especially because it's a new administration, to really focus on that, because that is the need that I find, that they may be able to get
Yeah.
this money, but they just don't.
Well, you know
how
what?
to
We still
promote
want to
their
talk to you
business. Yeah.
because it's about connecting
Yes.
you and others.
Absolutely.
And so,
Thank you.
but thanks for your question.
So unfortunately, we are pressed for time, so we're going to have to move to the next panel. But I encourage anybody who has additional questions. Our panelists will be out and about. You can always grab them and ask them quickly. I'm sure they have other places to go. But anyway, yeah, we're going to move into the next panel in about 5 minutes. We'll just take a quick break and then get going. So, for those of you still with us, I'd like to welcome you to the second portion of our event today. This is a small business roundtable, which is just going to have some input from 3 prominent small business owners, and we're going to talk a little bit about their experiences growing and starting their businesses in New York City. And we're also going to take a look at some of the, take a little more deeper look, I should say, at some of the data from the Can Capital Small Business Survey. So it should be an exciting discussion. I'm just going to quickly introduce our panel, and then we'll get right into the discussion. So to my left, we have Eric Campione, who's the project manager of Pack Plumbing in Staten Island. We also have Gil Seigler, the CEO of All Car Rent-A-Car. And to the far left is Dr. Anderson Torres. He's the CEO of Regional Aid for Interim Needs, which is RAIN is the acronym, R-A-I-N. And we're going to get started. So one of our audience members, I thought, brought up a good point to start this discussion, talking about how small businesses utilize social media to grow their business, but also to engage the consumer. So I'm curious. The survey kind of showed that maybe some small businesses don't quite have the the wherewithal to really get their social media, put their stamp on social media, whether through Facebook or Twitter or any of the other various platforms. So I'm curious, from your perspective, if that's held true. Has it been, do you utilize social media? Is it beneficial in terms of growing the business? Is that, or are we kind of viewing it too narrowly in that sense?
Thank you. I put our company on social media last year, and it's definitely proven to be successful. We started with Facebook, went into Twitter, LinkedIn. I use it for finding employees as well as just letting the community know what we're doing. This year actually marks our 35th year in business, and I did a huge campaign where we promoted goods. One in particular was a toilet bowl that we offered like a contest, and the winner of the toilet actually redid their entire bathroom. So it was, we gained more followers. It's boosted our awareness, It helped our branding and kind of let us stay in tune with the community. So I love social media. I think it's pretty good for our business.
And just to follow up, with Twitter and Facebook mostly, or any other platforms that you found useful?
Well, Twitter I find a hard time just because it's harder to stay in the Staten Island, New York City, Brooklyn area. So it's kind of harder to market that way on Twitter as opposed to Facebook, where you could actually choose a market and demographic and all that stuff. So it's I prefer Facebook for my company, but I know Twitter is definitely really great for other businesses.
Yeah, hi, thank you. We have a car rental and a car share company, and we're both on Facebook and Twitter. We definitely find that it's an increasingly important tool. I don't know how much it really has benefited us business-wise and so much in terms of ordering. We find a lot of times there are contests that we've sort of shied away from, that people used to just join to win the prizes per se. So we find that we've moved, and I've seen a shift that the prize is similar to what Eric said, where the prizes should be more relevant to your product as opposed to, let's say, giving away an iPad or something that's just generic that people will join or like you just to earn that prize and then they delist you. We definitely find it helps communication from our customers. We find very often that customers in the past may not have expressed some positive or negative feedback, and they'll either post it on a Facebook page or tweet a message directly to us, or they'll at least email us directly through Facebook. So it's enabled us to have much more real-time information and communication with our customers. If businesses, let's say, slow this week due to weather, it enables you to have a quick contest or quick notice of, hey, we have a discount. You know, if you want to put it out into a newspaper, you need a couple of days or maybe a week lead time to design an ad, find placement, wait for the issue to come out. Here, in a matter of hours, you can get an ad up on Facebook. Hey, we're doing this, doing that, save $10. So we find that Facebook and Twitter have definitely helped. We're trying to engage our customers on Instagram to, again, we're in the car rental business, so hey, take a picture with your car, have contests in terms of that. It's been mixed results. Some people are eager and they'll send us pictures of them on vacation to win something, but other times a lot of people just, I don't know if they have too much overload between the different platforms, but it's definitely taking over a lot of the other forms of communication.
Good morning. I represent a not-for-profit organization that has also property management, and the organization is called RAIN, and we have just turned 50 years old, and my founder is about to turn 98 years of age. Beatrice Castiglia-Catullo, who started the organization with a $500 donation, and now on one product side, 15 mil, and on the other about 14 mil. For us, and I'm in that role now a little over 4 months, so coming in and looking at social media, we had to totally revamp our website, scratched from soup to nuts, completely new. I have some information that's disseminated in the back there for you to visit that website. In order for us to also gauge the importance of social media, since we're in this initial mode, I mean, an organization that has had such a history and not focused on social media, we predominantly serve seniors in the Bronx and in Upper Manhattan. So we just started, and I'm not a Facebook guy, but we just started a Facebook page. I was told as of this morning we had over 120 likes, and we also started a Twitter account. And in order for us to be really savvy with the social media piece, what we decided to do was to also execute an intergenerational program and have youth involved. They're going to drive my social media piece. And then we will see the ROI on that implementation. I would gather that we would see it, you know, by the end of the summer, early fall, with their feedback, because they're critical. As you well know, young folks have this great ability to navigate and really push the social media piece. I was humbled the other day where they came into my office since we're having our 50th anniversary. It says, we got to get you on YouTube and we got to videotape you. And I said, what does that mean? He says, well, you're going to get a lot of hits, and believe us, just do it, act naturally, and we'll take care of the rest. I don't even want to look at the videos. But again, they say that there's a big value in the market in order to push your product, and I'm trusting in that as well.
Hello?
All right, there we go.
And kind of just piggybacking off of that, according to the survey, the Kane Capital Small Business Index, a lot of small businesses have yet to optimize their website for mobile devices. Close to 20% did not even have a website. So I wonder if there is a larger theme at play here in terms of utilizing technology to help grow your business. Obviously, small business owners range from older folks to kind of more young millennials. So I wonder if we're seeing the technological challenges more with the older generation of business owners, and if so, are there ways that you found that kind of help cut through the daunting kind of technological obstacles in terms of utilizing a website and optimizing your website for mobile phones?
We actually have we use a marketing company, Yodel, who developed a mobile website for us, and it's invaluable, the amount of tracking the leads and just seeing how many people actually reach out to us via mobile device. It's probably over 50-60%. And Yelp as well. I track those leads, and the same thing. 50-60% of the people calling me, reaching out to us from the internet or from mobile devices. It's very crucial that we have a mobile website and mobile-friendly way of connecting.
Yeah, I agree. Again, we're in the transportation business, and between car rental and car share. And we find that today the studies show that more people use or access websites through their mobile devices, which today now includes phones and tablets, than they use a desktop computer. So actually, our company's in the process of updating our mobile websites. We currently have them, but to make them even more refined and more usable, because that's definitely the way to go. Regarding the different platforms, there are just so many of these different platforms between like a Yelp and so many of these sites. It's kind of hard to manage and navigate them all. Years ago, I remember we started a business 35 years ago, and it was just really the size of your Yellow Pages. Every year we take out a bigger Yellow Page ad, and your business would sort of grow based on that. That no longer exists today. You have to manage, as Eric said, Yelp and your reviews on Yelp and other websites. You have to really monitor what people are saying, and it's all done in real time, and it can be done anytime during the day, 24/7. So you have to sort of be ready and able to communicate with your customers, giving them the information they are looking for. And again, considering that people use their phones and their tablets today constantly, even at home. I see at home my own family members are using their phones and their tablets despite the desktop. It just sits there idly in the corner. So that's definitely important to learn how to use those.
Question. How many of you have had to deal with a health issue, whether yourself or for a family member or who has been a caregiver in the past year? So we're all impacted by health. So what we did was that we also secured a company called Eddie Batis Associates. Eddie is from the Bronx, went over to the West Coast and has returned over to the East Coast. And we wanted to create an experience on the website. So he linked it onto the mobile device, and we have actually received inquiries on health issues. And that has become very user-friendly. One of the things that we've also done is that in our senior centers, we have computer labs. So we're linking the senior and the youth over to the apps side on the devices that are being used. And we're constantly revamping and asking them if we need to tweak, fine-tune, and update the apps for the website as well. And that's actually ongoing. And I suspect that we will never finish because it would need to be customized, depending on the need in the community for our product.
So, just looking again at the small business survey, we talked a little bit in the last panel about access to capital, and it was obviously very interesting to hear from more of the government side of things. But I'm very curious to hear anecdotally from small business owners what is the easiest way that you found to obtain capital. So, according to this survey. Applying for a bank loan was the easiest at around 30%, but right behind that was asking friends and or family for money. And it seems to me, if those are your two options, it seems very limited for growing. Accessing the capital you need to grow your business. So I'm curious, how have you found, what have you found is the best way to obtain capital, and is government, is helpful in growing your business, or is there a regulatory environment that makes it difficult?
Well, actually, we are in the process of going through an SBA, trying to get an SBA loan. We are a disabled veteran company, and so it hopefully will be a little easier for us. But actually, the easiest way for me was I joined a contest with the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and I won a grant for $50,000. It was through a business plan that I developed. So that was the easiest way for me. It was a lot of hard work, but we do have loans with banks, just regular banks from Staten Island, and we're hoping that the SBA loan comes through, because construction and having open accounts, it's difficult on your cash flow, and you definitely need that money to push forward.
I'm curious, actually, if I could just follow up on the grants. How did you hear about it? I mean, was it something that you heard of word of mouth, or was there government outreach in terms of events or seminars that you heard about these grants? But how did you find out?
Well, I'm co-chair of the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals Group, and I built a bunch of connections, a ton of contacts, and one in particular, one of my council members was he was with the 40 Under 40 with the SIEDC, and they told me about the contest, and I entered the application in, and out of 33 businesses, I was chosen as one of the 13, so got lucky.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on what Eric said, I'm also, in addition to running the business, on the executive board of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and active in Queens Chamber of Commerce. And those are great resources for businesses to join, because they have small business centers that help businesses in terms of legal advice, just general advice, networking opportunities, which you could meet other banks and other lenders of various sources, similar to what Can Capital does. And they might be in a secondary market, and those might be some of the best sources for lending. So getting involved in the community and networking is, I think, almost as equally important as the friends and family, because friends and family can only go so far, and if your business ever fails, it's kind of hard to face them if you can't repay them. We find that we deal with banks. Again, we're in a specialized business that we have automobile financing, and a lot of banks shy away from that. So it really takes time, and a lot of just shula, they're knocking on doors and developing contacts and explaining what it is that you're looking to do and how your business operates. Because I think banks today are not just looking at just simple equations. They're looking at what your business is, understanding your business, how does your business work. And we find that keeping your bank informed is very important. So we'll tell them, and we have a slow time, we'll explain why. If we're having a busy time, we'll explain why. So if the greater confidence they have in you and your business, the greater it is ability for them to lend. And then that's if it's a traditional bank or a secondary source. There are also a lot of times different types of lenders, like a Can Capital, that are specific to a certain industry. We find that in our industry, we deal with banks that are out of state because they understand the car industry, and they're actually interested in the car industry, as opposed to some of the local banks that are here that just have no appetite for that. And that can happen in different industries. If it's textiles, food, manufacturing, get involved in trade associations, because they could help you provide leads of where similar competitors of yours have borrowed money.
The quickest and easiest for me right now, I appeal to you. I have PayPal on my website. You can all make a donation. And B. Castiglia Catullo thanks you and all the seniors and youth. I have no shame in asking and going forward and networking. Networking is incredible. We also work very closely with the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. You have a phenomenal individual here today representing the chamber, and that's Michelle Cristofaro, who must be here in the audience. Go like this. There you go. We also have networking and fundraising committee meetings. But I tell people when they're in the room, not-for-profit and for-profit, there's an ROI. How is it that we can benefit in partnership with each other? Identifying also some of the foundations that the banks have, the discretionary funds. Hey, Lenny Caro from the Bronx Chamber, there you go. But, you know, we explore all possibilities. Banks are great, foundations are great. We might get a notice via email through our networking initiatives. My founder, actually, by attending a party, was able to secure a multi-million, well, after a 5-year period, multi-million-dollar grant to feed the hungry. And so with that, that's 500 meals a day, and the word gets out there. So when I have my meetings with the banks or with local businesses, restaurants, or the Yankees, who were so generous in giving us a couple of tickets so that we could conduct a raffle through our website, looking at what they may be able to offer that ultimately hits that life in that community and beyond. We can't just look at, say, for example, Bronx or New York City. We recognize that our span is much greater when you have relatives that are in their countries of origin that may not be New York or the United States, and appeal to those sources as well.
So we talked a little bit about some of the kind of big legislative initiatives coming down the pipeline in the last panel, specifically talking about paid sick leave. We talked a little bit about the Affordable Care Act and the minimum wage increase. So I'm curious, and I don't know how much research that you all have done into how these various legislations would affect your businesses, but of the three that I just mentioned, paid sick, Obamacare, and a minimum wage increase, which one would have would potentially impact your business the most in terms of, you know, from a bottom line perspective and also just the overall health of your business?
I believe probably the minimum wage raise. It's a big deal and really not that big of a deal. We do try and pay over minimum wage, of course, to entry-level employees until we can train them well enough to get out there on their own 2 feet. The problem for us, the challenge is having that capital for training. Training is key for our quality and the standard of work that we put out to be high. And if we have a higher minimum wage, it might affect it. It might not. I mean, $3 an hour, I believe it is. It could be, it's going to be passed down on to our customers, and it's difficult being a union contractor, whereas you have moonlighters and people that are doing weekend work trying to steal our business, and they'll do it at a lower cost. So.
I would agree with Councilman Carnegie, who spoke earlier, that any minimum wage hike should be phased in gradually over time. Otherwise, it'll be a shock to a system. Because again, I think that the economy is not as recovering as well as the nationwide statistics show. We find that a lot of our consumers are still struggling. We find that we're unable to raise our prices, and any attempts to increase costs definitely will just put a further impact on employment and business in New York City. So we would be in favor of any minimum wage increase to be staggered over a certain period of time and indexed. I think in our particular case, it's probably the cost of healthcare, which is really rising at more than double-digit rates, which is kind of alarming, and some of the requirements that are being posed by Obamacare. Again, the theory is all great, but when it's all saddled together, ultimately someone has to pay for those costs. And we definitely support it and encourage it, but it's just cost-wise, and if these double-digit, pretty high double-digit increases come through, it could be kind of scary in the long run. Regarding paid sick leave, we've always adhered to that law. We've actually provided more than just what calls for the law. Just like, again, in speaking to small businesses through the Chambers of Commerce that I'm involved in, a lot of businesses are concerned over the cost of it and general enforcement. Hopefully the de Blasio administration carries forward on their word and really tries to not carry forward the strict enforcement of the prior administration and heavy fines. And if they work with small business, I think that there's a lot of benefit to that law, but hopefully in the enactment of it, it doesn't hurt small business.
I think Rick Miranda, former colleague of mine, and with the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce would say, ay caramba, to the minimum wage. We just actually had a struggle with how do we ensure compliance with the Affordable Care Act on the benefit end. So we were able to do something on the minimum wage. The larger the business, almost like there's a penalty with your business being a large piece there because it can have a financial impact. Every penny is a penny. And one of the things that, as a not-for-profit as well, we're actually forging relationships with the for-profit with contracts, which you might hear or is being referred to as managed long-term care contracts with Aetna, Merit Group, and so forth. And they have certain set rates. If we were to go and immediately look at a minimum wage increase, it would have a detrimental effect because this is not something that can also be passed down to the disabled individual that we are providing service to. So being mindful, and I think the staggering piece gives us some type of respite in order to strategize and see how we could also look at other relationships and contracts that can leverage a higher reimbursement rate for the service provided.
So we have a little bit of time left, so we're going to open it again to the audience for any questions that they have for our 3 successful small business owners. And you can, if there are multiple people, you can always form a line at one of the microphones.
I have one question, which is to deal with predominantly the healthcare sector. A lot of private practices are getting bought over by the hospitals just because of the fact they don't get enough reimbursements or they have a tough time complying with the policies or the new procedures which have been enacted after Affordable Care Act. And that goes against the fundamental view of Affordable Care Act in my mind, because the entire premise of the Affordable Care Act was to keep the patients away from the hospital and do a lot more preventive care. So is there anything with the small businesses trying to help enable the private practices to stay afloat and be profitable rather than getting bought over by the hospitals?
Testing. Interesting question. I'm also sitting on the New York State Public Health and Health Planning Council looking at the prevention agenda, and before our committee, the acquisitions and mergers come before us as we look at the impact on community. There's this one doctor who happens to be also a board member of mine. That's why also board members are very critical in a business. And his name is Dr. Segal in the Bronx. And what he's done is that he's actually forecasted with the changes and the impact on his business, and he has a home visiting business. So he's actually getting referrals from hospitals that are not able to provide that type of product line. And now he's moving into telehealth and telemedicine. So looking at what trends may be out there that now managed care companies are beginning to fund or consider, and position yourself so that you would be able to negotiate a healthy contract, which is something that he's done in order to sustain and grow his business. He actually has, I believe at this point, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 lives, and is projecting the next 3 months to have 6,000 to 7,000 and expanding throughout New York City.
Hi, my name is Rosa Oviedo, and I work for the United States Postal Service. And I'm here representing the United States Postal Service and representing the small businesses that I deal every day. I'm a little bit nervous, I'm sorry. But I just want you guys to know that the United States Postal Service is offering a very low cost price for businesses so they can target specific areas, and it's called Every Door Direct Mail. You guys can go online and Google it. But I'm happy to be here because I can find out that through Facebook and Twitter, they can advertise too their business. Like this service, it can cost like 17.5 cents. Some of them, they cannot afford it. So maybe if they can find it, I want to ask just a question to the panelists. If it can be convenient for them maybe to do it, if it's not going to cost them anything to advertise it through Facebook and to Twitter. So what will be their process to do it if they cannot afford using the Postal Service? Because I only use Facebook for my personal business, and the only people that I know, it's the people that, I mean, I will only contact, like, I will only speak to the people that I know. So you guys would just put it for everybody? Like your advertisement?
Well, Facebook in particular, you could really segment your ads, and they're constantly continually doing that. I mean, so does Google, where you could actually tell them in the demographics. Facebook actually knows a lot about you that you're not even aware that they know. They know the searches that you do on your computer, whatever it may be, if it's from shoe stores, nail salons, furniture, cars, travel, and then they'll take a business such as our business, if it's a car rental, and they know, okay, we have these 100 people who are searching for car rental, and they'll place our ad on their site. If you look at your Facebook, especially on a desktop, over on the right, you'll see small little ads. Those ads aren't really random. Those ads are really targeted to you based on your search criteria, different things that you've looked at in the past. And also in the middle of your news feed, there's also sponsored stories or suggested posts or suggested likes. You might see an ad. You know, I read every morning City and State and other news publications. Okay. So I'll see, hey, you know, so-and-so friend likes the New York Post. Maybe I want to like the New York Post. Or if I'm searching for a hotel, I might see an ad, hey, maybe I should like Hilton or Marriott or a similar hotel. So that's how they target the ads. And you could set a certain budget, X number of dollars per day, per month, a certain number of viewers you want to hit. And then you pay. So there is a cost to it. None of it's free. And you could sort of target based on zip code, based on if it's male, female, or different general age brackets or general demographic areas. It doesn't get super refined, but there are ways you could do that, but there definitely is a cost to that, and it's not only on Facebook. You could also advertise on Google. When you do a Google search, up on top, there's a shaded area. In that area is 2 to 3 different ads, and then over to the right on Google, you'll also see further posts, and those companies, if you click on them, the company that had the ad gets billed for that. But those companies are sort of bidding to be put on in that real estate section on top. So you'll say, hey, if anyone clicks on me, I'll pay Google $2 a click, $5 a click, $10 a click, depending on the keywords that are used. So, so it could be managed by an individual, but there are definitely costs involved.
Okay, so that's good to know, so I can share with them.
May I just add to that? I don't know what your, well, for us, we do plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. We also do a lot of residential in-home service and sales. And I created a contest where my technicians go into people's homes and they try and get their emails to reach out to them via Constant Contact and let them know what maybe contests we're having via Facebook, and to like us and to, you know, review us. Hey, if you like what we did, let us know and, you know, tell the world. And it really helps us find our strengths, find our weaknesses, and it also grew our Facebook. Tons of likes came through that, and I want to say free. It's not really free because I'm paying the men's time, but you're definitely reaching your audience. It's who you want. It's your customers, and you're keeping in constant touch with them for absolutely free via Facebook. Just the cost of the internet that you're already paying. So that's one way that we grew our likes, and we're at almost 300 likes right now. We have over 1,000 Twitter followers.
Okay.
So that's one way that we did it.
Okay, so that's good to know. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sandy. I am a digital media consultant, and I just wanted to come up and applaud you on your social media presence and understanding that in this ever-changing digital world, that it's really powerful. Just fun fact, if Facebook were a country, it would be the 3rd largest. After Google, Yahoo, and Bing, YouTube is the next largest search engine. And I was just curious because as a business owner, you didn't get into your particular industry so that you could handle and have to deal with all of this. And what I come across is a lot of small to medium-sized business owners that have been burned in the past, and they just don't even want to hear about it anymore. They've already heard about, oh, putting you on the first page of Google. So I just ask you, have you experienced that? If so, how have you dealt with it? And how do you search for services like that on the internet?
Well, as I mentioned, we use Yodel for search engine optimization to try and stay ahead. When it comes to plumbing, we're widely known on Staten Island in particular. The heating and air conditioning aspect of our business, I'm trying to grow using Yodel. Obviously, it's somewhat of a pay-to-play type thing. So it requires a lot of cash, and I found other alternate sources of advertising such as Angie's List and Yelp, which has been very successful, and it's proven itself, the return on investment. So Google is definitely something I'm aspiring to be top of the web pages for plumbing Staten Island in particular, also going into New Jersey, a little bit into Brooklyn. It's expensive, so I haven't kind of been aggressive to be #1 on the Google page. I know that it's important. I've seen some of my competitors have been investing dollars into becoming the first search or just advertising. But yeah, it's definitely important.
Well, I mean, a couple of things we found is also create a blog. Google looks, I mean, the search world, I mean, again, like you mentioned, even though we're in the car rental and car share business, we've had to learn a lot and keep reading about social media and how it works. I mean, Google is constantly changing the rules and the landscape. So they really look for relevant sources. I mean, you have to just think about it. You have on top of your computer screen 2-3 possible places for Google to place an ad. Google only makes money if you click on those ads. So they want to put relevant searches. So they want to put someone that you're bound to click on. So they don't want to, if you're looking for a car rental in Brooklyn, they're not going to put a car rental company in Yonkers because that's not going to get a click. That's not what you're looking for, and Google won't make any money. Google also looks for relevancy of your, are you an expert in your field? Are you someone that the consumer wants to click on? So have a blog, take some time out and write about it. We have our staff do that. We actually hire someone to write a blog, post information that's useful and relevant that someone does want to read, and it has some of the keywords. Years ago, you used to just have to stuff your website with certain keywords to appear higher in a generic search. That doesn't really apply as much anymore. So, you know, advertising, getting to be #1 is also a misnomer because you could also search for cheapest car rental in Brooklyn, and I could get you #1 on that. But that's maybe not what someone is actually searching for. Google will actually tell you what people are searching for. If it's plumbing, if it's cars, if it's healthcare, whatever it may be, they'll tell you the keywords people are using, and that's what you want to target your ads for. So it's very misleading. Someone could tell you, I'll get you to #1, but on a keyword that no one really uses. So what's the point of being #1 on that keyword? And you don't necessarily have to be #1. You want to be relevant. And over time, Google will look at your reviews, if it's on Yelp, if it's on Google, if it's your generic searches, get into local media. Maybe your local newspaper might write a story about you. That will get indexed, and it'll help you because, again, it creates a scheme that you're a company that's worthwhile dealing with, and Google wants to have you up there. And same with all the other Bing and Yahoo. So it's really a whole strategy you have to employ, not strictly advertising. That's only a small part of it. If you have to have rich content and relevant content in your website.
You know, I take pause and then I ask the question, what's important for me to know about you? And then I try and take that experience and then share it with my staff. And when I have an overwhelming percentage of staff and my clients coming to me, telling me that social media and Facebook, Google search and all that's so important, I have to pay attention. If I don't pay attention to the reality of what's around me, then I become obsolete. And you know, being surrounded by people that are competent and progressive and know, and I'm the first to say I don't know it all. Every day we learn something new and humble myself with that. and magic happens, and the customization goes with that. For me, it's very important, and I mentioned before, is to create an experience, because I don't want to have a product that's just stagnant. What's important for me to know about you?
So what I gathered from all of that, I can just tell that you're all very in tune and you know the ins and outs. I'm Google certified, and everything you said about relevancy and having a good search optimization experience is all correct, and it seems like no one's been burned, at least up on the panel. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us today for our small business event. Thank you to the panel for a great discussion. And be sure to pick up, we have issues of city and state scattered around the room. I'm sure we have some up front as well. Make sure to visit the Can Capital table, which is still out there, yes, for more information on accessing capital for your business. And have a lovely day.